So for today's class, I wanted to say that Bob Ross is with us right here, and he's saying good hello. And in honor of Bob Ross, we'll be painting happy little trees. And now I need to pause the recording. And I wanted to show you the example of the painting that we did the last time. So the painting that we did in November was this painting. Now this is the painting I painted during class, but I also wanted to show you how by refining this, you can come up with something that's a little bit more refined, and see how now the reflection here in the water looks a lot more like the overall reflection, and it doesn't break so much here at the bottom. So what I have done is I have gone over this whole section with a glaze of blue to unify it, and of course it's slightly different. And then I put some highlights in here, and I repainted the sky. So this is an example of something that we did the last time. Other examples of classes that I have done in the past, or that I might do again. So I've done the picture with the cherries. That's a good one. And I have done the lighthouse with, all of the rocks here at the bottom. So this is all different shades of blue with purples. This is all different shades of orange and red and a little bit of magenta. I like to do that to keep the colors simple. I also like to do the vase. It's just a simple vase that I have in my stuff. And just with 3 colors, the pink, and in here there is some turquoise, and there is some blue. So these are simple subject matter, especially for beginners, and it allows the students to practice using doing a glaze, doing also a wash. And I'm going to show you examples of what I mean by doing a wash. So in watercolor, if you wet your whole paper and then you paint the whole thing with just the same flat color, this is called a flat wash. And it is an exercise that we will be doing either today in class, or I will assign this as a homework, and then we'll start the class next week by doing so. These are 2 other examples. So in the case of this one, it's more like a graded wash because it goes from a darker blue to a lighter blue. And in the case of this one, it's a flat wash because it's the same darkness, or the whole time with this red. So these are excellent examples of things that you can practice on your own, and you'll see it takes a few tries before you actually get this. And if you are interested to see a demonstration of that, you can contact me either by email or text me after class, and I can point you to a demonstration of this that I already have posted online, so you can watch it and try it on your own. Now, okay, so now for today, let me see, I have my little notes here. So for today, we will be drawing a scene. It's a fall scene, and in terms of the way that we're going to approach it, I'm going to show you the example, and I'm going to ask you to do a small drawing, like a small version of the drawing, and I'll give you 15 minutes to do this. You won't have time to draw every single blade of grass, I can tell you that. I just want you to do a rough drawing of this small scene. And then after that, we'll talk about the scene, we'll talk about the composition, and then I will give you a demonstration on how I approach it to draw it. So we'll draw it together on a 9 by 12 piece of paper. Well, that's the size of my sketchbook, and that's the size of my watercolor paper. So once we have drawn it today, then we can trace it onto our watercolor paper. For next time we meet, then we will paint it. Any questions on that? Okay, so I'm gonna pause the recording. I'm going to share my screen so that I'm going to display on the screen an image of this. Then I will give you 15 minutes for you to draw it. So when I say draw it small, this is my full book. This is the size of my full book. So you could let's see, I'll show you. So you could do a small little version like this of the drawing, because you only have 15 minutes, or you can do it like this size or this size, but don't do the full page because you might not have the time to finish. So I'm going to share my screen. Mute all. Yes. Okay. And allow you to see the photo. Is there any questions before we start the drawing? Oops, there are some notes. I don't want you to see the notes. Not yet. I will show you here.
Why is my video stopped?
Leslie, hello. And so now this is the landscape. So I will give you 15 minutes to draw it on a small, a small section of your page. And it starts now. So it's 1:45 right now. And so you have until 2 and to do the drawing in a small scale.
My video stopped. So I'm going to leave. I'm leaving.
Okay.
Right.
So now during this 15 minutes, I took the time to do a little drawing. Very, very simple. See this here? So see this here? This is what I meant when I said just do a very simple something of, very small. You can see it's about the, width of my hand, just to represent overall. And here in my book, I also wanted to bring your attention to the fact that when you do a pine tree, well, in this case, it doesn't show at all, but some pine trees have the branches going down. Some pine trees have the branches going up, and some have them straight. So when you do a pine tree, when you're painting it or drawing it, you can decide which way you want it, or you can look at what your scene is and try to represent what you see. So now I would like to see what you did in terms of your drawing. If you do not want to show it, that's okay. But if you do, I would really like to see it. So I'm going to pause the recording, share my screen. Okay, hold on. That's not it. This is it. This is it. Okay. So I'm going to put this here. Can you see it says watercolor class composing a landscape with trees?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And I forgot to mute everybody. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And if you have any questions during this part, you can unmute yourself. But after we've gone through each grouping of two drawings, then we'll unmute everybody. We'll have a little discussion. So the first grouping is this one. So you have A or B. So I know these are very crude drawings, but they indicate a change in composition from A to B. So put in your book, do you prefer A or B? And why do you prefer A or why do you prefer B? So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. So the next one is C or D. So indicate in your book if you prefer C or D and why. So do you prefer E or F? And why do you prefer one over the other? Now, this is G or H. So do you prefer G or do you prefer H and why?
Much better.
Okay. So one thing that I want to show you is that before I do a drawing, oftentimes I will do a little thumbnail of the drawing to see if it seems like it's going to come out. So these are all examples of larger paintings that I did, but I like to do a little thumbnail. This takes 5 minutes and it gives me an idea, okay, is the composition strong? Where do I put my darks? Where do I put my lights? I like to do this. And this is somehow a little bit of the same thing. So, but now we are at a point where we've done our little study and we are going to do the full drawing. If you feel comfortable and you want to proceed and do the full drawing without even waiting for my explanation, just go ahead and do it. But I will do the steps here and give you a little bit of time after each step to do your own part. If you want to follow along this way. So the horizon line, we discussed this, so we do not want the horizon line to be in the middle. We want it to be 2/3 down or even 3/4 down is good, because this is mostly about the trees and whatever is in the background of these trees. It's not so much about the reflection, although we could do a different approach and do a different drawing and do it about the reflection. But in this case, we're going to do it about what's above the water, although there will be some reflection here. So my first step will be to do, and this is in my book, this is a sketchbook, 9 by 12, just regular paper. And the first step will be to indicate my horizon line. So my horizon line, although here will be broken by these rocks, I will first do it like this. I'm just going to do a line. And I'm doing this dark in my book because I want to make sure that on the camera you can see what I'm drawing. When I'm drawing just for my own, I don't make my marks so dark to start with because some lines I know I will need to erase. But to make sure that you can see it, I'm doing all of my marks very dark. And when I need to erase them, it might be difficult, but you don't have to make everything so dark to start with. So this is my horizon line. And I'm going to immediately indicate where my rocks are. So there's this one that's quite in the middle, but it's not equal in size. And actually, I think it might be a little bit more interesting if I move it a little bit to the left. So I'm going to do this. Starting here, I'm just going to indicate this rock. It's kind of interesting. And like this. Voila. Actually, it's a little bit too big now. So I'm just gonna go like this. Yes, this is better. So that's my first rock. And I'm gonna now draw this second one here. This second one is a little lower. So the bottom of the rock is lower than my horizon line. So it's about here. Now remember, this rock is a little smaller than this one. So this is basically the bottom of this rock. And as I draw the rock, it's actually a little bit above the horizon line. It's a flat one. And it's got to be a little smaller than, I mean, not quite as long as this one to make it interesting. And actually, on this side, I want to have it like this. So this is my second rock. And because now the horizon line, I don't need it, it's behind the rock, I'm going to erase it. And I'm going to put the other rock that's in front, this one here. And for the purpose of this drawing, we're going to make this rock a round rock to make it even more different than the other two. So first I indicate where this rock, the bottom, where it meets the water, like this. And I'm going to make it a round rock, like this. There. And now this one is behind the big round rock, so I can erase this part of it. So I'm changing a little bit the drawing from what we have here, just so it's a little bit more interesting. So far, we have the rocks. Do you guys need a minute or you're good? Give me a thumb up if you're good.
Could you show it again?
I'm sorry?
Could you show your picture again?
Ah, yes, to the camera.
Yeah,
Yes.
my thing is really small. Okay.
So I did
Thank
the
you.
rocks.
Yep.
And now I'm going to indicate my trees. So normally what I would do is I would draw the trees very lightly with my pencil and the overall shape of the cone. And after I've done that and placed them where I want them, the right size that I want them, after that, I would then give it all of these little branches. But the first initial drawing would just be a line drawing of a cone. So while we are recording, I'm going to mute you guys. And if you need to ask questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So I'm going to place the biggest tree at first, which is the one on this side. So if I go like this, you can see better. This one, it touches a little bit on the side and it goes all the way to the water. And because we've moved this rock a little bit to the left, it's gonna land on top of the rock here. So it's almost to the top of the page, but not quite. So you want to give it some space between the top of the paper, like so. So the original drawing would be like this. So I'm doing this dark, but you should not do it so dark. And then like this. So this is pretty much the size and the shape of this tree. Should have 3 lines here. Now I'm going to indicate the size and the shape of this one. So this one touches on this side, and it's pretty much over this rock. So goes like this. Little shorter than the previous one to have variety and a happy little tree. I think that this was a little bit too much to the left. So I'm going to try again. Go here. Yes. This would be better. All right. So this is for this tree. It's not as tall as the original one, as it's this one, a little lower. And it's over these rocks. And now we're going to indicate this one here, which is a smaller one that is in the back. This one is not in the middle, in between these two trees. Composition wise, it's better if it's on one side or the other. And we're going to put it on this side. So this one is smaller, like so. And it lands a little bit behind this tree. Actually, my line is not quite straight. There we go. And also behind this rock. So now I'm going to show this to the camera. So this is a rough draft of where the trees will be. This one, and this one, how tall they will be. And before I indicate all of the detail about these trees, now is a good time to replace it. Like, let's say you don't like the height of this one. Well, now's the time to make it a little smaller or a little taller. Same with this one, before you actually go into the detail of doing all of the trees. So always go and work from large shapes to detail about the objects. Is there any questions so far? Do you need time to can you continue your drawing? Well, since I don't hear anything, then I'm going to continue. The next part that I want to indicate is the reflection. And if we look closely at this painting, so we have the reflection of the pine trees that are here and here. However, in front of it is the reflection of the rocks. So we're first going to indicate the reflection of the rocks, then we're going to add the reflection of the trees. Now, reflection is always a mirror image of an object. So if I were to draw this rock, the reflection of this rock, and go like this, well, it wouldn't work because it's not a mirror image of my rock. So it's very important that it is the mirror image. So if you have an incline like this, then it has to incline this way. Then if you have a peak here, then this is where it has to peak. And then go down, a little up again, and then the incline here, like this. Now this peak here is not quite in line, so I have to correct this. Like so. This is pretty good. Whoops. And like this. Yes. So that's the image of the reflection of this rock. If I were to turn it upside down, it would look the same because it's the mirror image. So starting with this one, Now we're going to indicate the reflection of this round rock first, this one, and then we'll end with the little one here in the back. So the round rock reflected like this. There. And this one, the little one, is not quite as high. Like this. So now we have our reflecting rocks. So this one reflects here. This one reflects here. This one reflects here. And currently we have very sharp edge on all of these reflection, but in reality, the edge of a reflection will never be quite so sharp. Now that we have indicated the reflection of these rocks, we're going to indicate the reflection of the trees. And a reflection is never completely sharp, so I'm just going to put a little wiggly line to indicate the reflection of this tree. Ooh, this is nice. Now we have this tree here that's further away. Because it's further away, it will not be as tall here. So it would be something like this. And this tree here will be like this. And like this. Oops, I gotta make sure you guys can see. All right. So this tree here, which is in the back, will be much shorter in the reflection than this one, which is closer to the water. So this one will be full reflection. So now we have an overall drawing of all of the objects, and it's time to go into the detail. There's one little thing that doesn't seem to be right, and I'm going to correct it right now. This tree here is in the background, should not appear in front of this, even in the reflection. So it should be like this. Something small, but so it makes a difference. Yes. Okay. Is there any questions about this part? So the next part of our drawing will be, because if you look here on this painting, this is what we're representing on the paper, and none of it is white. Everything is at least yellow, which is our lightest color. So the whole paper needs to be covered in a light gray color. And to do this, I use my HB, and I will simply go over everything with my HB and cover everything with a light gray color. The whole thing, everything. And once this is done, don't be afraid to make it too dark, because if you make it too dark for any reason, you can always use your kneaded eraser. This is what I ask you to purchase as part of your material. So a kneaded eraser can be kneaded, and it can be used to erase very easily. So for example, if I thought that this area here, let me see, if I make an area very dark, and if I find it too dark, I can use my kneaded eraser and just press against a certain area, and it will make it lighter. So it's not necessarily going to make it white, completely white, but it will erase some of the lead and make it lighter. So if I do it here. So this is very useful when you want to just lighten a certain gray area. You can do it with a kneaded eraser. So cover the whole thing with a light gray using your HB. It's good. Oh, oops. Having a problem with my easel. I need to adjust it. So while you're finishing this, so now I have this. So I have my drawing that I can still see, and I have a light gray all over my paper. And the next step now is to go into the detail of the different objects. And since I started recording again, I've muted all of you again. And if we look at our example, which is right here, so we can see the darkest dark in this overall example is definitely the trees. And then in terms of, you know, the lightest light, well, we can easily say that the lightest light is all of this background and these rocks, the top of the rocks in the middle of the water here. And then we have the mid-tone. There's a very little of the mid-tone. The mid-tone is like the bottom of the rocks here. And this orange here at the back, and maybe the edge of the reflection here in this rock. So it's mostly very dark and very light. And I also want to ask you, and we'll discuss that at the end, but think about how many colors I have used to paint this. So don't answer this question right now, but I'll ask you the question at the end of the class today. How many colors did I use, and which are they? And those who have taken classes before with me, you know that I usually only use a few restricted colors to paint something. So that's something to know as well. All right, so the trees. So we're going to start with the trees, the darkest dark. And some of you, when you did your initial drawing, you had shaped those trees into something very interesting. And that's what we're going to try and do here. So the branches are all pointing down, and that's what I'm going to represent here. Starting with the top, I use the side of my pencil to put these branches, and I go outside of the initial cone that I had drawn, just to mask it. Now remember, this is the darkest dark in the overall drawing. So it's gonna have to be very dark. So right now I'm not making it very dark. Well, I'm making it kind of like a mid-tone. For those of you who have more than just an HB pencil, I also recommend it for class to have either a 4B or a 6B. So a 4B, this is a 4B. So B is for bold. So a 4B will usually give you a much darker color than an HB. And for those who want or are wondering, so there is this little scale here, and you can see the 6B is much darker than, for example, the 6H. So H stands for, you can remember it and say for hard. And when a pencil is hard and the lead is very hard, it will leave less lead on the paper, making it lighter. So B is for the bold colors and the darkers, and whereas H is for the lighter. So HB and 4B or 6B for this class is sufficient. And with my 4B, I can go much darker. Need to sharpen my pencil here. Excuse me. I can go much darker with my 4B than I did with my HB. Giving it this nice shape of the branches. And there is still some sky hole in between because a tree is never completely full. Once you've done this one, then you can do the other one on the other side. I like to start with my HB, and then I go with the 4B after. Or if you have a 6B, but if you don't have the 4B or the 6B, you can just go with the HB. You can still go pretty dark with HB. Okay, once these two trees are done, we're going to do the one in the back, but this one here, the little one, is further away from the viewer, from us, and therefore will be a little lighter. So I'm going to only use my HB to shape this one. There. So now I have my trees. Like this. And they are missing the reflection. Their reflection. They feel a little lonely without their own reflection. So we're going to add the reflection. Now, when adding the reflection, I want to bring your attention to this here. You see right here in between the tree that's above and its reflection, there's a little area that's a little lighter, like just a very, very thin line. And this, you can imagine that the water that's here, and it's touching the shore right here, and it creates a little ripple right where it touches the water, where it touches the shore. So when the water touches the shore, it creates a little ripple, and that's why there is a little line here that is lighter. It's kind of like a little ripple in the water. It also indicates your horizon line. So this here is your tree. Now it's to draw the tree, I'm just going to turn it upside down so that I can do the branches the same way that I did the tree. This way it's not complicated. For me, I can just do the same movement. Same here. Now I'm going like this to test to see if the point is in the right spot. And it is. That's very important. Yes, it is. So we're good. Let's see if I take a longer pencil. Yes. So you can do the same thing. Make sure your reflection is in line with the tip. I can do the same thing with this or with this. Very important. Now I turn it upside up and I have my reflection. I'm just going to show it a little closer. Now you can see I lost my line here, but I will use my kneaded eraser to find it again. So far, so good. Is there any questions so far from anyone? All right, now we have our trees, their reflection, which the reflection we shaped the same way that the trees are, made them slightly lighter than the tree. Now, if you made your reflection of the tree as dark as your tree, you can use your kneaded eraser to make them slightly lighter. And so you shape it in the way like maybe a flat one, and you can just press like this to make it slightly lighter. In this way, it looks more like a reflection rather than just the exact same image. Now, one thing that happened as I was doing this is I lost my little line here that we can see right here. So using my kneaded eraser, I'm going to knead it into a very thin line like this. See, it's very, very thin. And I'm going to create my line again. And when you do this, you need to always knead it and keep folding it. There. So now I have found this little space here again. Now, one thing we haven't talked about is how this rock here, the fact that we can see it clearly is because behind it, there's these shrubs and stuff. And in the case of Julie, you have some tulips or something. So anyway, this is wild shrubs that are growing right behind that rock. And it's important to indicate that on our drawing so that we can actually see the rock very clearly. So this is what we're going to do. So this is kind of like a mid-tone. And you just indicate it like this. And it will encircle the rock in some areas, maybe it's higher, some areas it's lower. Closer to the rock could be a little darker, like so. So this way, our rock is shaping up very well. So it's making it pop. There. And in this area here, the tree branches, if we imagine that they're behind the rock, they should not be appearing or coming on top of the rock here. So this area here should be clean from branches. So I'm going to clean it up with my kneaded eraser to show that the rock is in front of this tree. And in front of all these little shrubs. So I'm making it very sharp, a sharp edge with my kneaded eraser. Like so. Now the rock appears really in front. The rock, however, is not completely one very light tone color. It's got light on the top, and it's got some a little darker, like a mid-tone closer to the water. So that's what we're going to indicate now. So closer to the water, it's got a mid-tone. Sometimes it's skinnier, sometimes it's bigger. Because rocks have all sorts of shapes, and they're very rarely a cube. It's got all these angles and mishaps and organic shapes that are very interesting. And maybe closer to the water, it might be a little darker. And here when I use a kneaded eraser, maybe I made it a little too light. So I'm just gonna redo the gray, the nice gray we had on it. So now I have shaped my rock, this one, and so I shaped it in two different ways by adding the background shrubs. Now that defines the top of the rock very well and the lit area of the rock. And I've also added these shaded area that are closer to the water. Now all of this need to be shown in the reflection in the water. Now this here, the bottom part of the rock that's in the shade, will have this will be reflected in the water. And these shrubs that are behind the rock, that are very far away from us, they will not be reflected in the water because they're too far away. So here we will not see these shrubs here. So I'm doing the overall rock, because it's so light here, will be a little bit darker in the water, even the light area. So I'm going to first do a little darker of a rock overall. Because a light object reflects dark in the water. So now we have the rock, and then now I'm going to add the dark areas of the rock. And again, it's got to be the mirror image. It's a little tricky. There. And so if you have a line like this, like me, you need to use a kneaded eraser to make this line disappear, because in the water it would not exist. But I did this line very dark so that you can see it on the camera. So now I'm going to make this disappear, and I'm going to also add a little space here where the water meets the rock. There's a little bit of a ripple. So that's why on the painting, we have this little line here. That's what this little white line or yellow line is. So create the little line, not necessarily the same width, the whole through the length of the rock. Make sure you keep folding your kneaded eraser to get a new light, a new clean area of your kneaded eraser. To do this, now it looks like this. Now I'm going to try and erase this very dark line. It's hard. There. All right. So now my rock looks a little bit more like a rock, especially with the little white line in the middle. It shows like there is something there, like the water meets the rock. And as I see, we only have 2 more minutes to this class. So the 2 other rocks will be done the same way as this one. One thing that I want to show is the water. So the water here, closer to the rock, will be a little darker, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the pencil doesn't necessarily need to reflect the exact way that the branches of the tree appear. And it's not a bad idea to break the very sharp line of this reflection of the rock, because in the water, nothing is super sharp. But having this here is good. And now I'm gonna just put this, because what I want to show you at this time, I want to show you how to create this little line here, or like this. Very, very important, because that is how you can show it's the water. So using the kneaded eraser, you just go like this, and then you can fold it, keep going. And you don't necessarily want this to be lighter than your actual water here. So you can just go back on top and go like this. And it shows like it's a little ripple in the water. See this? Now these 2 rocks, I didn't have time to do the explanation or do the example, but you can do the same approach as you did for this rock. And the background, For our drawing, we're not going to work on this background again. We will have some fun once we paint it. Now what I'll do is after the class is over, I will finish the rocks and record this part. So if you want to watch it to make sure you have the example on how to do these rocks, you have the option to do that. But for now, and identify which are the areas that are the darkest dark, which areas that are the lightest light, and which are the mid-tone. And when you do the black and white study like this, if it's a good composition, there's a good chance that when you paint it, if you paint it with the same darks and lights in mid-tone, that it will become a nice composition and a nice painting. But if the black and white study is not a good composition and strong, then no matter how much beautiful paint you use, it will never become a great painting. It might become a good painting, but never a great one.
Plus, there's not a lot of midtones in this, right?
Not a
Mostly
lot of
dark.
midtones in this.
Damn it. I like
So
midtones.
just to finish class, I know we went over a little bit, but I wanted to come back with the questions that I had, which is, what colors did I use to paint this? And I'll give you a hint. I used less than 5 colors.
Wow. Okay.
Cadmium yellow.
Well,
Magenta?
actually, before I ask the question, I'm going to show you the color wheel
Yes.
to tell you that I used colors from this color wheel. Okay, so this is yellow, Indian yellow, orange, red, orange, red, magenta, indigo, oh no, purple, indigo, blue, turquoise, green, and lime green. So I'm going to go back to here. Someone had mentioned yellow, and I can tell you it's close to yellow, but it's not the yellow.
Yellow orange?
It's this one here, which is the Indian yellow.
Oh, Indian yellow.
Okay.
Magenta?
And it's very close to magenta, but it's not magenta, the other color that I used. I used the purple.
Purple. Wow.
Yes.
Purple.
Purple. Okay.
Orange?
And orange is the other color
Oh.
that I used. So I only use 3 colors
Wow.
and mix of these 3 colors. So that's how I can get the green is a nice mix of my purple with some yellow, Indian yellow, and a little bit of orange. And so using just 3 colors, I'm able to create a whole slew of different colors. And when we paint next week, we probably will be using a limited number of colors so that we don't get too confused with the colors.
Okay.
All right.
Homework. So what are the homework? Homework is
Go
to
on.
finish your drawing and also trace it and put it onto your watercolor paper. So if you prefer, you can simply redraw it onto your watercolor paper. When you put it on the watercolor paper, do not do the tones, just do the contour of the objects. So it will probably be something as simple as this. I mean, this is not the exact drawing, but it's just to tell you that something as simple as this on your watercolor paper will be sufficient. Okay. And when you put it onto your watercolor paper, try to keep the pencil marks light. Do not make very dark lines. All right, so the rock is in front of the tree. So I'm cleaning the edge of the top of this rock. The branches are not supposed to appear on top. Same here. This tree is way in front of that. This rock is way in front of that tree. And so I'm just going to make this a little lighter, a little grayer. Rock is usually not very light. And the edge of the rock is a little lighter. Just going to make it a little darker where it meets the water. Remember, it's an image reflection. And we want to have a little bit of where the water meets the rock. So using the kneaded eraser, I'm creating this line. This line is usually not equal. And then for this rock, which is the round rock, that's a new rock that we created. So let's make this rock a little lighter. There we go. Now it reflects here. There we go. Reflection is a little darker than the actual rock. There. Reflections are very tricky. Okay, here we go. Now it's a little lighter over here, so I'll just go like this. And using my kneaded eraser, I create this ripple area. There we go. So now I have these two rocks. Are pretty good. And because the reflection of the trees are in the water, it doesn't mean that we're supposed to see all of these branches. So it's okay if I go like this with my HB pencil to show that the reflection is actually a reflection in the water. And it's important not to see this line here. So I'm just going to go like this. Write this line. I should use another pencil. And here, where the rock is, it's okay that it's not completely straight. Okay. And let's see, the bottom of the water could be just a little bit darker. Just because when the water comes forward like this, it usually gets a little darker, closer to the viewer. There. So now we have the whole drawing. I mean, you could do a little bit of a darker just at the top, just a little bit. But that's not necessary. There we go. I think that's it. That's the whole drawing. So good luck with your homework finishing this. And remember, you can send me a photo of your drawing. I will be happy to critique it and return it to you. And next time that we meet will be on Saturday, December 19 at 1:30. And we will paint this. We will paint this drawing. So as a homework, finish your drawing and trace it onto your watercolor paper. Or if you prefer to redraw it onto your watercolor paper, that's also fine. Now, if you're more advanced and you would like to paint this before next class onto your watercolor paper, feel free to do so. You can always do another one during class of the same with different colors, or you can do your own subject matter. I will be happy to guide you through it next time. All right. Have a nice 2 weeks and stay safe.